They built the gallows before they wrote the verdict. But when the lightning split the sky and the rope broke clean, Emmett Grady got up off the dirt and started digging graves of his own. Emmett Grady was known in his small town as a man of integrity. Every day he rose with the sun and toiled at the local mill, where his sweat and hard work were matched only by his dedication to his wife, Clara. They shared a simple but joyful life together, filled with laughter and quiet evenings on their porch. Emmett was not one to seek attention. He was content to live humbly, earning the respect of his neighbors through honesty and kindness. As the community thrived, Emmett's reputation grew. People would often stop him on the street to greet him with friendly smiles, knowing they could rely on him for anything. Whether it was helping with a heavy load or lending an ear during tough times, Emmett was always there. His friends admired his steadfast nature, while Clara cherished her husband's unwavering loyalty. However, all of this changed when tragedy struck. One fateful afternoon, the sound of gunshots echoed through the town as masked men burst into the bank, chaos erupting in an instant. The robbery ended with 3 lives lost, innocent men caught in a storm of violence, and soon whispers began to swirl about who could be responsible. It was unthinkable that someone like Emmett could be accused of such a terrible crime. But when powerful figures conspired against him, everything shifted. With forged documents and manipulated testimony forming a web of deception around him, suspicion fell on Emmett like a dark cloud. His once peaceful existence was ripped apart as he found himself trapped in a nightmare he couldn't escape. Little did he know that this would be just the beginning of a fight not only for his life, but also for justice, a battle that would test the limits of loyalty and resilience in ways he never imagined. The tranquility of the town was shattered one sunny afternoon when a group of masked men stormed into the bank, their faces hidden behind dark fabric. The sound of shattering glass and panic screams filled the air as customers and employees scrambled for safety. Inside, chaos reigned as the robbers shouted orders, demanding cash and valuables while brandishing their weapons menacingly. In moments, 3 brave individuals, 2 guards and a clerk, stood their ground against the intruders. They exchanged determined glances, knowing they had to protect their community. With quick thinking and courage, they tried to subdue the robbers, but gunfire erupted in an instant. In the fray, no one could have imagined that good-hearted men would lose their lives that day. The echoes of gunfire soon faded, leaving behind a scene filled with silence and fear. As news of the tragedy spread through the town like wildfire, sorrow transformed into outrage. Investigators quickly flooded the scene, seeking clues amidst the wreckage. Grief-stricken families mourned their loved ones, while townsfolk gathered to discuss who could have committed such a heinous act. Rumors swirled about how someone so respected could be involved. While many searched for answers through witnesses and clues, it became evident that something sinister was at play. Powerful figures began to manipulate evidence, documents were tampered with, and key witnesses mysteriously vanished without a trace. All eyes unwittingly turned toward Emmett Grady. He seemed an unlikely culprit, the quiet man known for his unwavering honesty, but startling coincidences made him a suspect in everyone's eyes. As whispers grew louder, Emmett felt an unshakable sense of dread settle in his chest. Little did he know that this event was just the beginning of his fight against the forces conspiring to take everything he held dear. As whispers filled the town, Emmett Grady found himself caught in a web of lies spun by those in power. Initially, he was just a bystander in the chaos following the bank robbery. Friends offered him comfort, believing wholeheartedly that the truth would prevail. But as rumors gained traction, things began to change. The sheriff, under pressure to find a quick solution and appease the townsfolk's anger, turned his gaze toward Emmett. With a reputation for maintaining law and order, he sought someone to blame. Emmett's calm demeanor and quiet nature made him an easy target. After all, who would suspect the hardworking millman with a perfect record? The authorities began to twist innocent details into damning evidence, presenting them as facts. Witnesses who had once spoken highly of Emmett now seemed silent or weary when questioned. Some vanished entirely, while others were coerced into saying what powerful men wanted to hear. The forgery of documents was systematic, a meticulous effort to create an appearance of guilt that belied Emmett's true character. Shockingly, one forged statement claimed he had been seen at the scene during the robbery, a lie that spread like wildfire. Emmett felt betrayal cut deep as he discovered former friends had turned against him amid the chaos. He watched helplessly as despair washed over Clara, her faith in justice slowly eroding with every passing day filled with dread and uncertainty. As public sentiment shifted against him, Emmett's heart hardened. He realized that this was not merely about clearing his name. It was a battle against those who wielded power without care for justice or truth. With each piece of evidence stacked against him, Emmett understood he would have to fight harder than ever, not just for his innocence but for his life and everything he cherished. As the days passed, the web of conspiracy around Emmett grew thicker, darkening his once bright life. The townsfolk, fed by twisted rumors and manipulated truths, began to see him not as a victim but as a villain. The sheriff and his allies moved quietly in the shadows, orchestrating a plan to ensure Emmett would pay for a crime he did not commit. Documents began to surface, papers with Emmett's name written in bold letters, detailing his supposed involvement in the robbery. These forgeries were crafted with precision, mimicking his handwriting and personal details. Emmett felt a chill run down his spine upon discovering the first fake statement that implicated him. It became clear that someone had gone to great lengths to manufacture evidence against him. Witnesses who acknowledged Emmett's good character suddenly found themselves unwilling or unable to speak. Amid strange circumstances, some vanished entirely, while others were approached and coerced into silence. Whispers of threats and bribery floated through town, suggesting that anyone who dared to support Emmett faced dire consequences from those in power. Emmett's heart sank when he learned that a former friend had been among those silenced. A man he had once helped during tough times, now unwilling to stand beside him as he fought this injustice. It was as if a cloak of fear had settled over the community, shrouding any hope of finding justice. The sheriff continued pushing forward with the case against Emmett, painting a picture of guilt that was impossible for many townsfolk to ignore. With each meeting at the courthouse amplifying tension in the small town, it became evident that this was no mere criminal investigation. It was a calculated effort to eliminate Emmett from the equation altogether. Feeling isolated yet determined, Emmett realized he needed more than just proof of innocence. He required allies willing to combat the darkness that sought to consume him. As he plotted his next move, each passing day fired up his resolve to expose the truth behind this conspiracy and reclaim his life from those who had turned it upside down. The day of Emmett's public hanging arrived, shrouded in a heavy, oppressive silence broken only by the murmur of the crowd. People filled the square, their faces a mix of curiosity, fear, and morbid anticipation. Some had traveled from neighboring towns to witness the grim spectacle, while others stood rooted in place, unable to look away from the gallows that loomed ominously against the cloudy sky. As Emmett was led to the platform, his heart raced. Each step felt like time stretching into eternity. The rope hung there, cold, unforgiving, as his mind flickered with memories of Clara's smile and the warmth of their shared life. For a moment he felt detached from reality, as if an invisible barrier separated him from the chaos around him. He was not a criminal, he was simply a man wronged. His gaze swept over the faces in the crowd, some familiar but now etched with judgment and others home to cold indifference. He searched for signs of support but found only hardened expressions and anxious whispers. Fear coursed through him, not for himself, but for what this betrayal represented for his loved ones left behind. As the noose was placed around his neck, Emmett steeled himself against despair. What had happened to honor, to integrity? Each trial and tribulation had brought him to this moment where justice felt twisted and perverted. In those last heartbeats before the trapdoor opened beneath him, he felt an unexpected resolve ignite within. He would not be defined by this moment, he would transcend it. But just as death began to tighten its grip on him, a crack of thunder split the sky. A blinding flash of lightning struck the gallows with a ferocious roar. The beam splintered violently, sending Emmett crashing to the ground instead of swinging into eternity. Shock rippled through the crowd as gasps filled the air. Some called it an omen, while others simply stood frozen in disbelief. For Emmett Grady, it was not only a miraculous escape, but also an awakening ignited by fire and fury. A second chance to confront those who had woven this cruel tapestry against him. As he lay there on the ground with rope burns fresh on his neck, he rose with a burning determination to reclaim his life and seek revenge against those who tried to kill him unjustly. As Emmett stood on the platform, the tension in the air was palpable, and the weight of the rope around his neck felt suffocating. The crowd held its breath, suspended in a moment of collective anxiety. Just as the sheriff raised his hand to signal the execution, a dark cloud rolled across the sky, casting a shadow over the gathering. Suddenly, without warning, a blinding flash of lightning ripped through the heavens, illuminating everything in its wake. The crack of thunder followed almost immediately, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The townsfolk gasped in unison as the bolt struck the gallows with an earth-shattering roar, splintering the wooden beam that held Emmett's fate. Time seemed to freeze as the platform shattered beneath him, sending Emmett tumbling to the ground, the noose falling slack around his neck. Confusion erupted among those gathered. Some cried out in disbelief, while others clutched their heads in shock. A few claimed it was a sign from God, others whispered it was pure luck. The air thickened with superstition as many interpreted this phenomenon as an omen, a divine intervention meant to spare Emmett from an unjust death. As he lay on the ground, stunned but alive, Emmett's heart raced with a new fire. He could feel the townsfolk's eyes on him, some filled with fear, others with newfound hope. The sheriff, flustered and disoriented by the turn of events, struggled to regain control of the situation, but chaos had taken hold. Emmett slowly rose to his feet, shaking off the debris of his near demise. The townsfolk's murmurs morphed from judgment into something different, curiosity mixed with a flicker of sympathy. In that moment, Emmett realized that this act of nature might be more than just an accident, it was a chance for rebirth. With rope burns still fresh on his neck and a fierce determination swelling within him, he vowed to harness this extraordinary moment as he began to track down those responsible for his wrongful fate. Emerging from the chaos of the shattered gallows, Emmett felt an unfamiliar fire burning within him, ignited by the near brush with death. No longer was he simply the quiet, dependable man everyone had known. He had transformed into something fiercer, an avenger determined to reclaim his life and confront those who had wronged him. The rope burns on his neck served as a harsh reminder of the betrayal he had suffered, and with each throb of pain, his anger simmered dangerously beneath the surface. As he walked away from the scene of his miraculous escape, Emmett felt a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through him. The townsfolk's eyes, once filled with suspicion, now held curiosity and uncertainty. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a phenomenon that had spared his life, and their whispers hung in the air like smoke after a fire. But for Emmett, their thoughts mattered little. He was focused on one goal, vengeance. He knew he needed to start with the sheriff, the man who once enforced justice but now manipulated it for personal gain. The sheriff's betrayal cut deep, especially since he had taken Clara from him, leaving Emmett feeling hollow and alone. The thought of confronting that man filled Emmett with both dread and determination. He would no longer be a passive victim in this twisted game. With each step forward, memories flooded his mind, the laughter shared with Clara, their dreams together, and the life they built. Those dreams had been cruelly snatched away from him, and it was time to take back what was rightfully his. Emmett vowed to track down every individual involved in this conspiracy against him, from the corrupt sheriff to the judge who sold him out in exchange for power and influence. This was not just about proving his innocence. It was about restoring honor to his name and ensuring that those responsible paid for their actions. Fueled by a relentless thirst for justice and a fierce loyalty to his lost love, Emmett set forth into the world with a heart full of anger and an unwavering resolve to make things right once and for all. With fire in his eyes and a heart brimming with vengeance, Emmett Grady set forth on his mission to confront the corrupt sheriff who had not only betrayed him, but also taken away the love of his life. No longer would he allow fear to dictate his actions. Instead, he embraced the anger that surged through him like a raging river, guiding his every move. The sheriff had wielded his power like a weapon, twisting the truth and manipulating the very fabric of justice, and Emmett was determined to hold him accountable. Emmett's plan began to take shape as he mulled over the details of his confrontation. He knew he needed to be strategic. Charging in head first would only play into the sheriff's hands. Instead, he would gather information and evidence that would expose the depths of corruption that had ensnared him. The town was rife with fear, but some whispered the truth when they thought no one was listening. Emmett intended to befriend these hidden allies, those too frightened to speak out publicly against the sheriff. First, he would visit old acquaintances and listen closely for any scraps of information about the sheriff's dealings. He might find someone who had witnessed coercion or bribery, a crack in the armor that Emmett could exploit. Each day spent in pursuit of this knowledge would prepare him for the moment when he finally faced the man who had betrayed not just him, but also the principles of justice. But his quest for revenge extended beyond just the sheriff. Emmett knew that Clara's disappearance was intricately tied to this plot against him. The sheriff's involvement ran deeper than betrayal, it was personal. As he plotted his moves, he repeated Clara's name in his mind like a mantra, solidifying his resolve. Emmett envisioned every possible outcome, every confrontation that might lead him closer to justice. He would make sure that those responsible faced their reckoning. With each passing day, he grew bolder, fueled by memories of laughter that haunted him and dreams shattered by treachery. Emmett Grady was no longer a victim. He was a man with a purpose, a hunter on a relentless chase for retribution aimed at reclaiming both his life and honor. As Emmett Grady returned to town, the air was thick with tension and fear. The townspeople who had once respected him as a good man now regarded him with wary eyes. Whispers filled the streets, some spoke of his miraculous escape from death, while others feared what his return might mean for their own safety. Emmett was no longer seen as the quiet mill worker. He was now a man on a mission, a hunter seeking retribution. His first encounter was with old neighbor Mrs. Thompson, who had always baked him cookies as a child. Seeing Emmett standing before her, she gasped and stepped back, her hands trembling. "You shouldn't be here, Emmett," she warned, glancing nervously around as if the sheriff's men might appear at any moment. "People are scared you're not the man we thought you were." Undeterred, Emmett pressed on. He sought out former friends who had distanced themselves during his trial. When he approached Tom Jenkins at the tavern, Tom's face went pale. "Emmett, I can't talk to you," he stammered, fear evident in his voice. "The sheriff will hear about it." Emmett could see the internal struggle on Tom's face. His loyalty clashed with his terror of the powerful sheriff. As he continued to gather snippets of information from those willing to speak in hushed tones, Emmett noted a pattern of fear that permeated every conversation. People would glance over their shoulders, fearing repercussions for even acknowledging him. He realized that many had been coerced into silence by threats or bribes, tools wielded by the sheriff to maintain control over the town. Emmett understood that the road ahead would be treacherous. With each encounter, he saw how deeply rooted the sheriff's influence was, and it only fueled his resolve. No longer would he allow fear to dictate his actions. He would confront these townspeople's fears head-on and gather allies among those who still believed in justice. Determined to reclaim not just his life, but also the town's sense of honor, Emmett prepared himself for the battles ahead. Each step he took solidified his commitment to face those responsible for his downfall, beginning with the sheriff who had twisted justice into a weapon against him and everyone he loved. The day had finally come for Emmett Grady to face the judge who had sold him out, the man whose betrayal had ripped apart his life and coerced him into the shadows. Emmett had spent weeks preparing for this moment, gathering evidence and allies, all leading to this final confrontation. The courtroom felt different now. Once a place of justice, it was now a theater of treachery. As Emmett entered, he caught sight of Judge Hargrove seated high on the bench, an imposing figure draped in ceremonial robes that used to inspire respect. Instead, those robes now seemed like a shroud of corruption that concealed years of bargaining away justice for power and favor. The judge's eyes narrowed as he met Emmett's gaze, a flicker of unease crossing his face as realization dawned that Emmett was not the same man who had stood trial fearing for his life. "Your Honor," Emmett began, his voice steady but firm, "you sentenced an innocent man to death while knowing full well the truth." The courtroom fell silent, tension palpable as murmurs rippled through those present. The judge's hands gripped the edge of the bench, his knuckles white as he tried to maintain control over the spiraling situation. "I regret nothing," Hargrove spat defiantly, though a tremor in his voice betrayed him. "The law is what I serve, and you were a threat." "A threat," Emmett replied, stepping closer. You twisted your authority to feed your greed. People died because you chose to betray me. Every word dripped with conviction, the anger that had simmered within him transforming into a fiery resolve. Around them, faces expressed shock and growing interest. They were finally witnessing the truth unfold before their very eyes. This was not just a confrontation between one man and a corrupt judge. This was Emmett reclaiming his honor and addressing an entire community that had looked the other way. "I am no longer powerless," he declared, feeling satisfaction ripple through him as he glanced at those willing to listen. "You may have taken my life from me once, but you will not take my soul." With witnesses ready to step forward and years of secrets about to unravel, Emmett felt hope surge within him where despair once lived. This was more than personal retribution. It was about restoring integrity to a town shattered by lies. As he stood there resolute, he knew that whatever happened next would set in motion a reckoning that would alter their community forever.